Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jin, and I am going to represent my team to present our study outcome, which entitled Revisiting the Oil Growth Nexus Evident from Selected Oil Importing and Oil Exporting Country. So the author of this study is me, myself, Kian Chin, and my lecturer, Dr. Shirly Wong. Next, for the introduction, in the early of 19th century, crude oil became an important natural resource used to carry out economic activity in a nation. The price of crude oil fluctuates under the global supply and demand force, where these forces are highly susceptible to influence from intergovernmental organizations such as coordinate and unify the petroleum policies of its member countries, such as the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So following the first oil crisis interrupt in October 1973, the oil price dynamic had become a critical concern in the field of macroeconomic analysis. It emerged as one of the important indicators of economic activity in countries worldwide, playing a significant role in the supply of the world energy demands. So a sudden oil price increase could wear our market confidence, putting inflationary pressure into the consumer market and therefore displacing the economic growth. Besides, past study has suggested that the oil price shock could affect the oil importing and oil exporting countries in many ways, and the impact could be rather distinct. Oil price increase might be bad news for oil importing countries, while it could be a good news for oil exporting countries. So, for instance, the increase in oil price could benefit the oil exporting country. When oil price is high, the oil export revenue will increase, and it will lead the economic growth in oil exporting country. So for oil importing countries, on the other hand, might experience entirely different scenarios for oil exporting countries, as rising oil price could be a threat to the user of oil import oil-based raw material. So rising oil price could be more expensive of cost of production, and it increase the overall price level of the goods and services in the oil importing countries. So on this note, understanding on how the dynamic oil price and economic fluctuation interact with some of the critical confounding factors in the economy will be one of the imperative practice in macroeconomic analysis. Given that the waving international market has no longer been the same after arrival of COVID-19 pandemic that brought a huge breakdown in the international supply chain, it is even more essential for us to revisit the oil growth nexus, especially for all major oil importing and oil exporting countries. To fill this gap, the present study is motivated to examine the interaction between oil price and economic growth for group and selected oil exporting and oil importing countries to provide a closer look on how the oil growth nexus work under the presence of COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, 10 major oil importing countries, including China, Germany, Italy, India, Japan, Netherlands, South Korea, Spain, and Thailand, and other 10 oil exporting countries, namely Brazil, Canada, Iran, Kuwait, Mexico, Nigeria, Norway, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates, have been subjected into panel analysis, covering the period of 1995 to 2021. That I will describe the data description that are analyzed in this study. Data for the 10 oil exporting and oil importing country are shown as the table that you can see. So the variable that analyzed in this study are economic growth, oil price, real effective exchange rate, inflation rate, and gross fixed capital formation. So the time period that covering for this variable are from year 1995 to 2021 by using the annual data. Next, I will discuss the methodology that used in this study. So for the first test that applied in this study is the panel unit root test. So the panel unit root test is used to check for the stationary of the data. So next is the panel co-integration test. So the Pedroni panel co-integration test has been applied to examine the existence of long-run co-integration among the variables. So next, our study also applied the fully modified ordinary least square of FMOLS to examine the long-run relationship between the variables. So next, we also have applied the panel ARDL model based on PMG estimator to examine the long-run relationship between the variable. Besides that, we also extract the error correction model ECM of the panel properties to pinpoint the short-run dynamic among the variables. So lastly, Our study also have applied the granular causality test based on VECM Borneo to define the short-run associations between the variables. So next, I will discuss about the empirical result. Firstly, is the empirical result for the panel unit root test, namely Lin-Chu panel unit root test for the oil importing countries. So based on the test, the results suggest that real gross domestic product, inflation rate, and gross fixed capital formation are statistically significant at 1% significant level at each level form. Therefore, the null hypothesis of the unit root can be rejected, implying the real GDP, inflation rate, and the gross fixed capital formation are stationary at level. So next, the oil price and real effective exchange rate based on the Levin-Chu panel unit root test are stationary at level form and integrate at level I1. So next, I will discuss the Levin-Chu panel unit root test for oil exporting countries. So based on this result, it suggests that real effective exchange rate is insignificant at level form, but it is statistically significant at 10% significant and 5% significant level at its first different form. So however, the result of the IPS show that real effective exchange rate is statistically at 1% significant and 5% and 10% level of significant at both level and its first different form. So next, for the IM cancellation panel unit root test for the oil importing countries, the results show that the real effective exchange rate and oil price are stationary at first different, while for real GDP, inflation rate and gross fixed capital formation are stationary at level. So next, for the IM cancellation panel unit root test for the oil exporting countries, the results show that real effective exchange rate is statistically significant at 1%, 5%, and 10% significant level at both level and first different. Therefore, the study will manage to conclude that real effective exchange rate is stationary at level or integrate for the order I0. Besides, the finding also infer that the no hypothesis of unit root can be rejected, and implying that real GDP, inflation rate, and gross fixed capital formation are I0 variables. So next is the panel co-integration test result. After the stationarity of the variable have been identified, the study applied periodic co-integration test to examine the existence of long-run co-integration between variables. So the periodic co-integration test results are exhibited in the table that present in the slide. So based on the table, the study found that 5 out of 7 co-integration test statistics for the estimated model of oil exporting countries are significant at 1% and 5% significant level. So therefore, no hypothesis of non-co-integration can be rejected, and it indicates that the variable of RGDP, oil price, real effective exchange rate, inflation rate, and gross fixed capital formation for oil importing countries are co-integrate in the long run. In addition, the findings reveal that 5 out of 7 co-integration tests for the estimated model of oil exporting countries are statistically significant, where panel raw statistic is significant at 1% significant level, while panel PP statistic, panel ADS statistic, group PP statistic, and group ADS statistic are significant at 5% significant level. As no hypothesis of non-integration between variables are rejected. Therefore, the result implies that the variable of RGDP, oil price, real effective exchange rate, inflation rate, and gross fixed capital formation for oil exporting countries are co-integrate in the long run. So next is the fully modified ordinary least square estimation result. So the results suggest that for oil importing countries, oil price, real effective exchange rate, inflation rate have negative relationship with economic growth, while for gross fixed capital formation, it has positive and significant relationship with economic growth in oil importing countries. So for the oil exporting countries, the results show that oil price are positive and significantly affecting the economic growth in oil exporting country, while real effective exchange rate and is negatively and significantly affected the economic growth in oil exporting country. While for inflation rate, it is negatively affecting the economic growth in oil exporting country, but it is insignificant. Lastly, for gross fixed capital formation, it is positively related with economic growth in oil exporting country, and the relationship is significant. Next is the result of panel ARDL model based on PMG estimator. So the result show that based on the panel unit root test result that present before, the variable are integrated as I0 and I1. Therefore, the panel ARDL model based on PMG estimator is suitable to employ to examine the long run and short run relationship between variables. So the result of panel ARDL based on PMG estimator that for the oil importing countries show that the respective coefficient of ECT for the estimated model of oil importing countries is negative 0.585 and oil exporting country is negative 0.305, which is negatively significant and less than 1. This means that there are an existence of long-run relationship among variables. Besides, it is found that oil price have a significant and negative relationship with economic growth in oil importing country in the long run. So the result show that one unit in increase in reduce in oil price will reduce increase in oil price will reduce economic growth in oil importing countries by 0.08 unit. However, the study found that oil price is statistically significant and positively affecting oil exporting economy at 1% significant level in the long run. For every 1 unit increase in oil price can lead to 0.05 estimated coefficient of can lead to 0.05 unit of economic upside in oil exporting nation. So furthermore, the empirical finding also suggests that economic growth in oil importing country and oil exporting country is negatively affected by inflation rate in the long run at 1% significant level. For every 1% increase in inflation rate, economic growth in oil importing nation and oil exporting nation will reduce by 0.966 and 0.173 units, respectively. In addition, the variable of GSC is positively and significantly affecting the oil importing economy and oil exporting economy in the long run. So the results show that coefficient value for ECT for Japan, China, South Korea, Italy, Netherlands, and Thailand is negatively less than 1, and statistically significant at 1%, 5%, and 10% significant level. Therefore, it indicates that the variables in this country are joined together to bring the effect to the long run. However, the coefficient of ECT for Germany and United States are more than 1, and the coefficient of ECT for India is statistically not significant. Therefore, the variable for the Germany, United States, and India are not joined together to bring the short run effect to long run. However, the empirical results show that oil price has significant and negative impact on the economic growth in India, Japan, South Korea, Germany, Spain, Netherlands, and Thailand. However, in Japan and China, both country economy is positively affected by real effective exchange rate, but it is insignificant in Japan. Next, I will present the Granger causality based on VECM for oil importing countries. So for the result of Granger causality test, it shows that inflation rate is Granger cost GDP and gross weak capital formation in the short run. For the oil price, it is Granger cost economic growth in the short run. And economic growth also Granger cost oil price in oil importing nation. So for the gross weak capital formation and economic growth, is Granger cost each other in oil importing nation in the short run. So for the estimated model of oil exporting country, there is a unidirectional causality running from inflation rate to real effective exchange rate, from inflation rate to gross weak capital formation, from economic growth to inflation rate, from oil price to inflation rate, and from oil price to economic growth in oil exporting nation. So besides, the study only found one bidirectional causality, which running from gross weak capital formation to economic growth and from economic growth to gross weak capital formation. So in conclusion, the empirical result of the study show that oil price rise will reduce the economic growth in short run and long run in oil importing nation. So the oil study found that the economic growth in oil importing nations such as India, Japan, South Korea, Germany, Spain, Netherlands, and Thailand respond negatively to the high oil price. So energy shock on net exporter have been difficult to impose, particularly in the way that successfully translates to economic growth. So for net importer, price-based policy, including transferring price increase to consumer and providing subsidies, can be implemented to reduce the negative effect of oil price increase. So both direct and indirectly, consumer can be affected by the price increase. So moreover, the policymaker in oil importing nation can respond to the positive oil price shock can be less by leveraging product passage using future contracts on the net oil importing nation with pro export for other community. So that's all from our presentation. Thank you.